much for the opportunity. It's great to be here. I didn't actually know that Parliament had a theatre like this. So you learn new things every day in this building. I'd like to start by acknowledging we are an animal country. It's a great privilege to live in this incredible part of Australia, and I'd like to acknowledge our elders past and present. One of the things that I've loved being a senator for the ACT is getting out, speaking to people, meeting organisations and businesses that are really grappling and trying to solve the challenges and the problems we face in big and small. And this probably sounds like a cliche that a politician would say, but it turns out it's true. And I am a politician now, so I can probably say it. And a few weeks ago, I was sitting down with Andrew, one of the co-founders of Quantum Brilliance. Quantum Brilliance is an incredible local startup that are developing room temperature quantum computers using diamonds. And so sitting down with Andrew, and he's trying to explain quantum computing to me, which is complicated. And then not long later, I sat down and tried to get my head around the changes to the safeguard mechanism. And I think it was all put in perspective. All of a sudden, the nitrogen vacancy centers in the diamond that allow you to use qubits seem to make a bit more sense. And clearly some problems require complex solutions. But in many cases, I think almost certainly in the case of climate policy, complexity can give rise to loopholes and unintended consequences. And you've probably heard many of them here today. And guessing, as was discussed earlier, and many of us would agree that there are better solutions than the safeguard mechanism to this particular challenge that we face. But we are where we are. The climate wars have left us with policies underpinned by interconnected markets and complicated mechanisms, and we desperately need to make them work. What I want to talk about today is not the nuts and bolts of policy, the far more experienced and credentialed people to do that, but what I thought I would talk a bit about is the approach I try and bring to this role, and what I've been doing, trying to grapple with something like the safeguard mechanism. For me, that starts with consulting widely with stakeholders, experts, and of course the community. And by applying a lens of integrity to each piece of legislation, and looking at climate policy through this frame reminds us that the problem we're dealing with does have a moral dimension to it, and also reminds us that we have got a lot of work to do. Many of us would agree that 43% by 2030 is mediocre at best. We're a developed economy. We've got such a high per capita emissions, and we're one of the world's biggest fossil fuel exporters in the world. We're not doing our fair share. We should be doing more, can be doing more, and so alongside many of you, I'll be pushing the government for a more ambitious 2035 target that elevates us to a position of leadership when it comes to climate action. In the meantime, we have to ensure that 43% does have integrity, because if 43% with integrity is mediocre, 43% without integrity and with all sorts of loopholes is plain awful. It's immoral for us to be doing that. And integrity means actual reductions in emissions, not paper reductions achieved through creative accounting. It's clear that offsets will play a necessary and important role in the transition, but it's critical that they're used with a high degree of caution. They do offer huge opportunities for farmers, for Indigenous land managers, to be rewarded for managing land in a regenerative way that actually sequesters carbon. but we have to ensure that offsets are carefully targeted for use in hard-to-abate sectors. They're inherently risky. In an economic model, they look neat, but in a world with a changing climate and a shifting political environment, offsets are an imperfect tool for a very difficult problem. So offsets must be used judiciously and never as a get-out-of-jail-free card. Almost every other jurisdiction sets limits on the use of carbon credits to offset emissions. There's variations, some are lower than others, and there are differences in what is covered. But the only other country that has no limits on offsets is Kazakhstan. So, as it stands, Australia will join Kazakhstan with open access to credits for boost offset. By contrast, under the now repealed Clean Energy Act, the then Labor government placed a 5% limit on offsets. So a lot's changed since then, and clearly the climate wars have left us with the safeguard mechanism, but they've also left us with many policies that don't actually serve the Australian people. They've left us with little political appetite for a windfall profits tax or changes to the PRRT, things that other countries have addressed and are now benefiting from. Other countries are ensuring that resources actually benefit people, not a select few individuals and companies. So that's what's happened, but how do we ensure integrity is embedded in our policies? Personally, as I said earlier, for me the starting point is listening to experts, and after over the past decade we've seen our climate policy institutions gutted and scientific expertise leached from climate policy making. This has to be reversed. Scientific expertise has to be respected and promoted. We have some of the finest scientific and policy minds in the world here in Australia, and we have to position them to develop policies to avoid the damaging tipping cascades that people like the late Professor Will Stephan and many others have warned us of for years now. We have to listen to the science. We have to listen to experts. But science alone will not allow us to navigate the social challenges of this transition. In this context, integrity requires listening and understanding the need for a transition that benefits rural and regional Australia. Communities in the regions that have relied on fossil fuel industries need to be put front and centre. I would like to see a strong and well-resourced transition authority to lead the way in making sure these communities are not left behind. The promise of future jobs is no longer good enough. We have to be creating those jobs right now. And there's some great work being done in the Hunter and Gladstone. We clearly need a more coordinated approach as a country, looking forward and dealing with this transition. Ensuring that people are assured that there are thriving industries for them to move into. And there are many innovative Australian companies showing us the potential in the transition. And we have to make sure that we back them and give them the opportunities to succeed and thrive and stay here in Australia. People are looking to politicians for leadership. People are looking to politicians for more ambition. We must make the case for bolder action. Bolder action for Australians today and bolder actions for future generations. Bolder action for First Nation communities from the Torres Strait to Bundjalung country, communities who are already facing the impacts of climate change. They're facing the impacts that that's having on their I'm trying to Scott to hurry up. On their people, culture, and connection to country. We've got to think about our Pacific Island neighbours. We can no longer talk about the Pacific family without bolder, more courageous climate leadership. It's time to step up and lead. And we need to act for millions of people in communities that we don't even, many of us in this room will never hear about or know. People who have contributed hardly anything to the crisis that we face, but it is the morally right thing for us as a developed country to step up and lead on. As an independent, I'm very aware that I work for the community. They will judge me on my efforts, and Australia has voted for a crossbench in the Senate that can hold the major parties in check. And being on that crossbench, I intend to use my position to work constructively, but to really push them on ambition. We're facing an unprecedented challenge. Humans have not faced a challenge of this size. We look at history and we know that global action is possible. The Montreal Protocol dealing with CFCs, countries came together and started to deal with it, but we know that there is entrenched vested interests, and in some cases just straight out state capture. But things are changing, and we know that progress is being made, and speeding that up depends on our collective efforts today. Australia must step up here in Australia so that we can begin to push on the global stage for more ambition. I just wanted to finish with someone who I admire greatly and knew a thing or two about societal change once said, "Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right?" And it seems pertinent as we debate everything from the safeguard mechanism to the voice to Parliament to think of this. We need to be asking ourselves, are we doing what's safe? Or are we doing what's politically acceptable or simply what is popular? Or are we doing what is right? And it's on all of us to steer that in the right direction. This is a massive challenge that we face, but it's an incredible opportunity. And we all know that future generations will judge us on whether or not we rise to this challenge. So thank you all so much for the work that you're doing. Keep pushing politicians to step up and ensure that Australia begins to head in the right direction and head in the right direction at speed. That's the challenge at the moment. So thank you very much for having me here today.